Draconian changes in law and policy at the congressional level or within the cabinet level before any real changes in reducing delay can occur. The delay is going to be there in the foreseeable future because things go very, very slowly through the congressional legislation process. You might see some changes at the cabinet level through CEQ or EPA, but I don't know if it's going to be as soon as we think. So what are we left with? We're left with the opportunity under this initiative as NEPA practitioners and lead agencies or developers to make NEPA more efficient and effective. And there are 10 ways that were covered at the TRB annual meeting that I'd like to go over with you. And also, if you've gone through, gone into the ReNEPA FHWA site, one of the longest strings ever recorded on ReNEPA, a string meaning comment followed by comment, followed by comment, followed by comment, one of the longest strings ever recorded, dealt with the issue of what came out of TRB, the 50% shorter time frame for completing NEPA. I don't know how many of you know Lamar Smith, but he's a key legal NEPA expert with FHWA, and he chimed in on the string of ReNEPA comments on making NEPA 50% faster, and he supports what was covered in Washington and reiterates it too. And so if you have a chance, go into ReNEPA and look under Lamar Smith. His name is Lamar Smith, and his entry was on February 26, 2010. So if you go into ReNEPA on the FHWA website and look under Lamar, you'll go to the entry for February 26, 2010 from Lamar Smith. You'll see what he has to say, and it will pretty much mimic what I'm going to be covering right now. Okay, take advantage of the planning process and a catalyst for NEPA. Under Safety Loop and in the new, the 2007 statewide and metropolitan planning regulations, 23 CFR 450. You'll go into Appendix A of those regulations, and you'll see the renewed emphasis to integrate planning and NEPA. And the first handouts that you can review at your convenience is, there's 3 things in this first handout. The first thing is linking the transportation planning and NEPA processes, an overview. This gives you an overview of what the intent of linking planning and NEPA is. If you're involved in linking planning and NEPA, I have a more detailed explanation of the process of accomplishing the linking of planning and NEPA. The aspects of the work that must be done and the outreach in coordination with the public that must be accomplished before you're going to be allowed to bring anything from the planning process into the NEPA process. There are requirements that you must go through and satisfy before you can bring anything from NEPA anything from planning into the scoping and NEPA process. And then finally, I've included an example document outline for a corridor level planning study or a sub-area planning study as referenced in the planning regulations. So there's a simple outline to help guide you in the preparation of the studies that should be accomplished for integrating planning and NEPA. But what I can tell you in brief is that you can establish the project purpose and need, or need and purpose in Texas, through the planning process. So you can establish a project's need and purpose. You can screen a broad range of alternatives or a broad range of potential solutions, transportation solutions, to address the need and purpose, down to the proposed actions to be evaluated in the EA or the reasonable range of alternatives to be evaluated in detail in the EIS. through the planning process. So you can screen down the full range of potential transportation solutions to a problem in the planning process. You can also carry forward or establish your logical termini and independent utility in the planning process. With all the tolling that's going on in the state of Texas, FHWA allows the provision of declaring in the planning process a financial need for alternative financing as part of your purpose and need. And you can do that in the planning process and carry it forward into NEPA. And so there are important aspects of planning that are relevant to the NEPA process. And this is all covered under been activated under Safety Lou, with Safety Lou pretty much on life support now, and expected to expired in September, and has been continued through continuing resolution through the end of this year. It is expected that the future replacement of Safety Lou will continue to allow these provisions. So that's the first set of handouts I have. It's paperclip. Okay. Second thing, initiate NEPA review only when the project is right. Make sure your project or your program is appropriately on the STIP or the TIP and or the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. It's very important that that's done before you get far into NEPA, because if you don't have your projects planned and programmed appropriately, they will hit a roadblock. They will hit text.env and they'll hit FHWA and they won't go anywhere. So make sure you're doing your planning and programming and your project is right before you go too far into NEPA. A lot of projects get delayed because that's not done. Invest in focused scoping to determine the real issues and those irrelevant to the decision. You read a lot of documents that are encyclopedic. There's no need to have an encyclopedic document if you do your scoping appropriately. Through scoping, you can identify which issues and resources are relevant to the decision and which ones can be discounted because they're not present or they're not relevant to the decision. And you can focus your efforts on those issues that are important to the decision and sort of dismiss or not put the effort necessary that's typically necessary for a big issue into that minor issue. You'll see Lamar Smith says, don't sweat the small stuff. It's the important stuff that you have to sweat when developing your NEPA documents. And the second handout I have is called Transportation Planning and NEPA Regulatory Policies Governing Agency Public Advisory Committee Participation during the project development process. It talks about the regulatory and procedural aspects of scoping during each phase of planning and project development. So it's 3 pages. It's in-depth reading, but it makes good reference to the regulations and the guidance that you're going to be obligated to follow. All right, let's see. After you're done scoping, the new thing that came out of Washington that you don't really commonly associate with NEPA is don't avoid, but manage risk. Really what they're going to start encouraging are risk assessments of all projects. Legal defensibility, at whatever the cost, is not efficient or effective. So every project is different and needs a risk assessment may be different for one project than another. So you can't treat all the projects the same with regards to risk. So you have to, after scoping, you'll have a good idea of what are the big issues, what are the public controversies on environmental grounds that you're going to need to deal with. And one-size risk assessments do not fit all, don't work. So you got to make sure that your risk assessments correlate to the type of